we have Ms. Ranganayaki Thangavelu. Ms. Ranga is a Deputy Executive Director at Beyond Social Services, which enables public mental housing neighborhoods to be villages that raise their children well. Beyond Social Services is committed to engaging families living in public mental housing so they can exercise their strengths and capabilities in addressing the issues they face. Ms. Ranga is a registered social worker trained in community development, restorative justice, and stakeholder engagement. Through Beyond, Ms. Ranga engages more people in peace-building efforts to create a society that is kinder, fairer, and more cooperative. Let's welcome Ms. Ranga. Ms. Ranga, please.
Thank you, Mindy, for that introduction. Let me just start sharing my slides. So just to give a bit of background about Beyond. Beyond Social Services, we work with children, youth, and families living in 1- and 2-room subsidized government rental flats. So we do experience a lot of challenges in these neighborhoods, but the way that we have decided to approach this is by taking a community development approach that focuses on the strengths and the skills of people there. I'm Ranga, and I was really changing this, what I'm going to share till the very last minute. So I did something yesterday, and then I got up this morning and changed it, and then I changed it again like an hour before this, because community resilience is a very, very big topic. And I was wondering how best to speak about this in a way that you can identify with. So I was thinking, where do I start with this big word that's community resilience? And Xiaoyan has touched on some part of it, like how when we are hit with a crisis, we find strengths and we act as individuals and as communities as well. And you would see movements throughout the whole world that addresses crisis in different shapes and forms. So when I was looking at it, I said, let's try and bring it to a level where we can participate in this community resilience. So I started with myself. So this is my community, at least some section of my community. The flats that you see in the middle on the top row is Tangling Halt. I grew up in Tangling Halt, Chap Lao, and it is going to be razed to the ground very soon. And I took a walk through nostalgia by visiting this neighborhood. I just realized my headset is not plugged in. Okay, by neighborhood, just to walk down memory lane and go back to my roots. Because what I experienced as a child growing up in this lower income community, 3-room flats, 2-room flats, even rental housing, is what I bring to my work, which you see in the center row. That's my colleagues. On the top right as well, there's my colleagues, my family. On the left, I have a mindfulness community that I engage with very frequently. They give me presence of mind and peace. And then you see in the bottom left, which is at least bottom left on my screen, I am not sure which side it appears on yours, is the community of women that many of my colleagues work with in supporting them, in encouraging them to take ownership in the communities that they're in. So starting with yourself, if you were to just take a moment and reflect back on the different communities you belong to and how that shapes you, I think we are onto something. So you could have been definitely shaped by family, friends, your religious communities, Rotarians as you volunteer in the Rotary, healthcare workers, hospital staff, how you participate in your work and in engaging community. That kind of gives you an idea of how you are in a community. And I think that is the most important part, to look at where do you stand in a resilient community. So Beyond's approach is, like I said, working with the lower income families that are always on the fringes despite their best efforts. We are really looking at how can we move beyond welfare towards stability. And it starts with the individual, like we just did, moves to the family, the immediate community, and the whole of society. So when we're talking about building a resilient community, it is about having the widest society, people like you and me who are not from the rental housing blocks, to be able to help them. And I'm just using rental housing blocks and families living there as an example. You can apply this to any type of community that is disadvantaged or on the fringes, or is putting up something that is not widely accepted by anyone else. So overall, when we move from the individual to society, overall society becomes a more caring and socially integrated. So this here is the heroes of my community, some of the heroes of the communities that I work with. We have the youth, we have the mothers, we have people who, like during COVID, really took charge and decided to help their neighbors and friends who are in need of food. This is actually food cooked by these women who are standing around the trolley. We started a project which is called Masakla, and they decided to cook the food, and it is supported similar to Share a Pot, but quite different, where they cook the food at home. They all have their licenses, food licenses, and then they plan a menu along with the community. We get some corporate funding to do this, and it's home cooked hot meals delivered to neighbors that they know. So this is something that is a very, very interesting project that we've taken. And you also see our childcare teachers working with children. So these are heroes of my community. And they are the ones who exhibit extreme strengths in extreme conditions. So going to what does community mean, just a little bit of a definition, right? So the word community actually comes from the Latin word communitas. And it's not just a gathering of people. It actually refers to public spirit. So when we talk about communities having public spirit, it is us looking beyond ourselves, moving beyond the individual, beyond me. Of course, I have to be a strong person as well to be able to participate in community. But I know that when I'm weak, there are people around to pull me up, to hold me up, to support me, so that I can then become a contributing member of community again. So the coming together of groups of people, both formally and informally, as social networks, as movements, colleagues, interest groups, and others, all of us shape what is community. And if we talk about the future, and I'm going to touch a little bit on SDGs as well, the future hinges on the accountability that citizens choose and their willingness to connect with each other around promises they make to each other. So these are very strong words if you were to just pause in this definition of community. Some of the information I have here is from Peter Block. He's written a book called Community, the Sense of Belonging. And he's an amazing, amazing person who I've not had the privilege of meeting in person, but I've attended many talks online that he has conducted and been part of workshops that he's conducting. So basically to look at the future is not defined by anyone else, but the community. And it is very important that these communities are not seen as a faceless group of people. They are made of individuals who have a certain contract with each other. So the citizens of this community have the capacity to own and exercise their power rather than defer or delegate it to others. So again, this is a very important thing to note. When we talk about civic action, civic responsibility, civil society participation, it is about community shouldering the challenges of a society alongside the structures like government in moving us towards sustainable solutions to what our communities face, what our society faces. And in so doing, right, in wanting to get there, we need to shift the attention from the problems of community to the possibility of community. So problems is often focusing on what are deficits. Deficits always exist. When I share about the low-income communities that I work with, the effects of poverty are there, for sure. There's early school dropout, there is broken families, there is addiction, there is violence, there is a whole lot of things that happen, right? These problems of communities don't only exist in the lower income communities, it exists in a lot of different stratas of society. But from knowing that this is what the families are experiencing, we've begun to say that they are not working in spite of their problem. They are actually working as a result of the problems that they face. So when we say that as a result of the problems that they face, what happens is that possibilities occur. What is the possibility that this community sees for itself, even as it is traveling, journeying through the problems it has? And from focusing on individual transformation, we begin to focus on collective transformation. And very importantly, we can only look at collective transformation if we look at the importance of social capital. Social capital is like the picture I showed in the very beginning of myself. That's all the social capital, or most of the social capital that I have. And then there's more. So if I have 300 friends on my Facebook page, not all of them are part of my social capital, though they could be. Maybe you will have a closer group of friends, closer group of colleagues, past employers, current employers, who form your social capital. And just like that, in any community that we are in, everyone can chart a big fat map about their social capital. And when we talk about disadvantage, sometimes we think that the key disadvantage is the lack of money in the communities that I work in. So there's not enough money, but it does not mean that as a result of not lack of money. Sorry, let me say that again. As a result of the lack of money, people can't participate socially. So they can't go out like you and I for a meal, and they can't participate in other recreational activities. So their social capital is somewhat limited. And one of the things in community development that we do is to assist them to identify social capital, either by connecting them to neighbors or by introducing new resources into the community. So how fragmented communities can transform is by focusing on these three things. When we talk about resilient communities, there are three common attributes that we can look at. They value and use their assets. So assets here refers to their strengths, their skill sets, their ability to cope, their ability to help each other, their connections. They understand and address their challenges together, and they're able to adapt, recover, and rebuild. And I got this from an organization which I find extremely interesting, bsr.org, which is an international organization that looks at how businesses can support in building resilient communities. So businesses are not there to build capital out of communities. Businesses are there as a co-participant in this whole structure that we have in building resilient communities. And when we look at resilient communities, again, more definition is there's definitely social cohesion, the ability to adapt and work collectively to respond to disasters and shocks. And in some instances where the communities are quite disadvantaged, the disasters and shocks are almost a daily affair. It may not impact anybody else, but it impacts the individuals living in that household. It impacts the person who is most affected in the community. But if you look at it as overall community around the world, there's also diversified economies. How do we look at it in Singapore? When we did a study of the families that we work with, we found that most of the families, because of their lower education, they were working in the gig economy. It is not a very diversified economy for these families. They only have one source of income, one source of jobs that they seem to rely on, which is the gig economy. And when COVID came along, it took away most of their jobs, and then they're floundering. While there are funds to improve their skills, and they can go about in retraining and all that, it takes a lot of time, confidence, and strength, and definitely a bit of rest space before they can get there. So diversified economies also lead to more resilient communities. So this is an area that we need to look at for lower income families in Singapore. The communities also respect and include diverse cultures. They share some practical traits like a good environment. They have a plan for their environment. They have strong education and training systems, long-term integrated, community-created sustainability planning, meaning that overall, how do we want to grow as a community? Some of these things I'm sharing, I know I'm coming from a space where we have done work like this. We have experienced communities around the world where such sustainable solutions have come about. And I don't have time to share exactly about, specifically about these examples, but some examples I have locally would be a group of women that we work with. They were home bakers, so they were already baking and cooking from home. So when I'm talking about a sustainability, a community-created sustainability planning, the role of Beyond Social Services then becomes where we speak to many people in the community, find out what their interests are. And when this group of women come together and say, we bake, we cook, we support them with additional resources to be able to make, to bring in their talents as well as improve it and help them to collectively create business. And now they are a very well put together group called Bakers Beyond. And over the COVID period, because they could not bake and sell the items, they began to also include other women who are good seamstresses. So they sew masks. Now there's a thriving business in masks. There's a thriving business in cookies and food that they cook. They're also making other types of handicrafts. So along the way, other women have joined who bring in other different skill sets. So this is a community-created economic success effort, we call it. So that ongoing, new members join, some people leave, new talents come in, and they continue to grow as a structure. And when we look at city resilience, The way the Rockefeller Foundation describes it is there on the screen. The capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems within a city to survive, adapt, and grow, no matter what kinds of chronic stresses and acute shocks they experience. Of course, what comes to mind for all of us now is COVID and how we as a city and a country are responding to it. Maybe not adequately, as some people would say, but we are responding in some way by coming together. But what I wanted to show with these definitions is that building resilient communities is not the purview of one group of people. It is everybody, economy included. And that is the main thing that I wanted to point out. So if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals of UN, they focus on 3 key areas: ecology, economy, and social resilience. We can't run away from the intersectionality of these 3 needs that all of us need. If we don't have ecological and environmental resilience, the planet will end, and we are causing the end of the planet. If we don't have economic resilience or equal opportunities for people, some people will always be left behind, and we are losing them. Social resilience, the ability to overcome the challenges that we are faced as humanity, as a world. So all of resilience has got to look at this intersectionality as well as address these issues. So this is what, I'm not going to read all of that, but this is an example from the Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust. And if you look at different groups of people, this is how individual resilience, social and economic resilience, and climate and environmental resilience can look like. So I'll share the slides later with those who are interested. So we need to be able to look at society as a big organism. And if we see, when I say them here, if we see the people who need support as members, then they are part of an ecosystem of change. So we work with them. If we see the social service sector as correcting the deficiencies that people who are disadvantaged have, we do to or for them. This is the key difference, the with versus the to. And the reason I'm pointing this out is resilience is an ongoing effort. It is not built in one day, neither is it built and it survives, because new challenges come up. And when we work with people to continue building this muscle, then over time, resilience is an ongoing way the community and individuals in the community respond to their challenges. So I wanted to share this with you. So earlier on, I spoke about Bakers Beyond. These are a group of women from Bakers Beyond working with a couple of volunteers on how to connect online so they can share their own, they can build their home-based businesses. And the person that you see second from left, wearing the black mask with the short hair, she is actually a person who does not speak very much English, but who's very, very good with her hands. And she had this dream to start a social enterprise, her own home-based business. And she had no clues how to start. But with the support of volunteers, what she did was to get a registered company, and she managed to put something up online, and now she's running a home-based business for her handicrafts. And we worry for her because it is not easy to sustain such a business, but she has had the support of a community around her to be able to do it. So when we talk about people and how they build resilient communities, it is first and foremost participation, allowing people to participate in the roles within the community so that they can build resilience. So this is about how we can actually tackle social issues through transforming the environment. So, when we look at our work, we actually do not see it as a top-down. It's actually a web of relationships. And often it is very, very much focused on strengths. It doesn't mean that things are smooth and it's always an upward climb. Things crash, people leave, but it is an ongoing effort. And at the end of the day, I think is the last line. There's a strong belief that we have a stake and can co-create solutions. So the co-creation is the key to building resilience. It is not teaching people different skill sets and say be strong. It is really about the ongoing co-creation. And I just want to leave you with some S words. Since it's a share a pot, I thought I could introduce some S words. So for a resilient community, the focus on strengths. And when I say space, it is really about, and this may not go down very well with some people, but I often say that as social service practitioners, we need to get out of the way, not to prescribe solutions, but to provide space for people to come together and create, and then you co-create with them and let them co-create with each other. And most importantly, people ask us, how do you measure this resilience? Corporate funders especially, they want to know from a scale of 1 to 5, did you move from a 1 to a 5 by the end of 6 months, or by the end of a year? Are people stronger? It's very hard to say that. And I admit that, yes, we do put out good reports, but at the same time, I think where the real strength of a community is in its stories. So stories are very, very important. When I say stories, it is real people's lived experiences, their life, how they've overcome certain challenges, and we begin to share that and begin to collect the various experiences. More people gain from their experiences and they begin to shift. So stories lead to shift, another S word. And most importantly, I think, actually I was going to put civil society, but I had to, because it's an S list, I had to change it to society, civil and civic participation. Very importantly, no one in this society that we live in should be left behind. So that's my belief. So if we have people on the fringes, we as civil society must include, must open the doors for them to participate, and vice versa. People on the margins feel confident enough to open their doors to allow us to participate. And over time, the solutions that we build must be sustainable, hinging on the 3 areas that I spoke about earlier: ecology, economy, and social resilience. So this is basically it. I think I've come to the end of my presentation.